What do you think is the main inaccuracy or the main lie that's being told that you feel like you can correct?
That the president didn't know what was going on. President Trump knew exactly what was going on. He was aware of all of my movements. I wouldn't do anything without the consent of Rudy Giuliani or the president.
In terms of the president and what he has said about you, he said about you and Mr. Fruman, Igor Fruman, I don't know those gentlemen, I don't know about them, I don't know what they do. You're saying that was not a true statement from the president?
He lied. The message that I gave Sergei Schaefer was a very harsh message that was told to me to give it to him in a very harsh way, not in a pleasant way.
Who told you to give it to him in a harsh way?
Mayor Giuliani, Rudy, told me after meeting at the president at the White House. He called me. His message was, it wasn't just military aid; it was all aid. Basically, the relationships would be sour. That we would stop giving him any kind of aid. Unless that there was an announcement made. Well, several things. There were several demands at that point. The most important one was the announcement of the Biden investigation.
Do you know if Mr. Giuliani was ever in contact with Mr. Barr specifically about the fact that he was trying to get Ukraine to announce these investigations into Joe Biden?
Oh, absolutely.
Mr. Barr knew about that?
Mr. Barr had to have known everything. I mean, it's impossible.
Did Rudy Giuliani tell you he'd spoken to the Attorney General specifically about Ukraine?
Not only Rudy Giuliani. I mean, Victoria and Joe, they were all best friends. I mean, Attorney General Barr was basically on the team.
So Vice President Mike Pence has his planned trip to the inauguration canceled after you were unable to get the Ukrainian government to commit to announcing investigations of Vice President Biden. Do you know if Vice President Pence was aware that that was the quid pro quo, that that was the trade, and that that, in fact, is why his inaugural visit was called off?
I'm going to use a famous quote by Mr. Sutherland. Everybody was in the loop.
You believe that Vice President Pence knew that his trip to the inauguration was contingent on those investigations being announced?
Again, I mean, I know he went to Poland also to discuss this on Trump's behalf, so he couldn't have not known.
Given that interaction that you just described with Congressman Nunes and his aide, Mr. Harvey, does it strike you as unusual or inappropriate that Devin Nunes would be one of the lead investigators into this scandal on the House Intelligence Committee? He's obviously the top Republican on that committee.
I was in shock when I was watching the hearings and when I saw Devin Nunes sitting up there, and then there was a picture where Derek Harvey was in back over there sitting. I texted my attorney. I said, I can't believe this is happening.
Because?
Well, because they were involved in getting all this stuff on Biden. I mean, Derek Harvey had several interviews, Skype interviews that I set up with different prosecutors like Nazar Holoditsky, which is the anti-corruption prosecutor of Ukraine, Konstantin Kulik, who's one of the major guys that had this whole Biden stuff. So it's hard to see them lie like that when you know it's like that. It's scary because, you know, he was sitting there and making all these statements and all that when he knew very well that he knew what was going on. He knew what's happening. He knows who I am. When
you say that Mr. Bolton may have things to say about this, did Mr. Bolton know that Vice President Pence was supposed to secure that agreement from Zelensky, that he'd announced these investigations?
I don't know exactly what Mr. Bolton knew, but I know Mr. Bolton was definitely involved in the loop because of the firing of Maria Yovanovitch. Also, his interactions with Rudy Giuliani. They started butting heads. And he was not agreeing. It was, from Venezuela to Ukraine, Bolton didn't agree with Giuliani on the way of dealing with it. So there was tension there. There was definitely tension. But you believe he knows what the administration was pressuring Ukraine to do? Bolton, 100%. He knows what happened there.
If for even a second you doubted why Nancy Pelosi held onto the articles of impeachment as long as she did, this is why. She knew that the longer she waited, the more damning information would inevitably come out. And the more information that came out, the more incriminating it would be. And she was absolutely right. This is an interview between Rachel Maddow and Giuliani associate Lev Parnas. Now, off the bat, so as to quell whatever inevitable Republican attempts to discredit him pop up, I should note why Parnas opted to do the interview. As Maddow would point out, Parnas was one of only a few people who knew this information that could clearly hurt the president. And so he felt that the more people who knew this information, the more people that could investigate it and vet it and corroborate it, the less likely it would be that Parnas' life might be at risk for being among the sole guardians of this info. Because as we've seen, the Trump administration operates more like a mafia-style criminal enterprise than anything even resembling a governing body. Parnas goes on to throw a slew of administration officials under the bus, starting with Trump. He claims that Trump himself knew of everything that was going on, and corroborating the testimony of other witnesses who came before Congress, that everything was done at the direction of the president. In other words, Trump knew that official action was being withheld as a condition for the announcement of a probe into Biden. And that action includes the release of $391 million in military assistance, it includes an Oval Office visit for Zelensky, and it includes Mike Pence's presence at Zelensky's inauguration in Ukraine. And just in case there was any doubt, when Zelensky didn't make the announcement, the fact that Pence's scheduled visit to the inauguration was canceled within 24 hours is proof that A, Mike Pence knew, B, that this scheme was actually happening given the timeline, C, that the players like Giuliani and Parnas were indeed in coordination with the White House, and D, that Trump and Pence were directly involved, considering the only people who are going to dictate the vice president's schedule are the vice president and the president. Parnas went on to implicate Attorney General Bill Barr by admitting that Giuliani would keep Barr in the loop in terms of what he was doing. Not only that he was, quote, basically on the team. In other words, what Parnas is saying here is that the highest law enforcement official in the United States of America was not just aware, but involved and implicated in the international extortion scheme for which the president has just been impeached. So when you wonder why the DOJ is selling itself out to completely defend Trump, it's because the DOJ and its top official are the perpetrators of the crime. Now, since the interview aired, the DOJ claimed that Parnas' allegations were, quote, 100% false, which means that either the DOJ, which Barr leads, already investigated these claims and that Barr cleared himself, which sounds super above board, or that they're blindly deferring to the guy already implicated in an international extortion scheme, which on its face doesn't seem very on brand for a department named for justice. Parnas implicated Devin Nunes, the investigator leading the investigation for the Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee, who, as everyone already suspected, was implicated in the very crime that he was tasked with investigating. Parnas revealed that he was working in coordination with Nunes' aide, Derek Harvey, who, quote, wanted to help out. And if that's not enough, Harvey already knew about all of the Ukraine affairs that Parnas was involved in. Add that to the fact that we already knew of phone calls made between Devin Nunes and Lev Parnas himself. So either, despite his aide already knowing everything, despite speaking with Parnas on the phone himself, despite being implicated by a first-hand source, Devin Nunes wasn't involved, or the guy tasked with investigating a crime for the Republicans was involved in the efforts to commit that crime, which generally isn't a great look. And finally, Parnas shines the light once again on John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, whose testimony in the Senate has become the topic of heated debate. And that's because on one side of the debate are the people interested in impartial justice. They're the people who are interested in what Bolton's own lawyers have said are the, quote, many relevant meetings and conversations connected to Ukraine that investigators have not yet been informed about. They're the people who would hear Lev Parnas admit that John Bolton knew about everything that was going on and would very reasonably want to hear more. And on the other side are people either blindly defending Trump or those implicated in Trump's crimes and covering for themselves. That's it, plain and simple. In other words, Trump knew. Pence knew, Nunes knew, Barr knew, and Bolton knew. And so unless the intent is to cover up these credible allegations of criminal behavior, allegations that are already largely corroborated, then there is absolutely no reason, at the very least, that these people would not testify under oath at Trump's impeachment trial. Anything less than that is only a furtherance of this crime.